Three mysterious visitors from the deep cosmos have crossed into our solar system, each one arriving at the exact time set by God, and each fulfilling a role in the unfolding woes of Revelation. In 2017, One-Eye Oumuamua passed through during the very season of the fourth trumpet on the great Orion clock, like an eagle soaring ahead to cry out and announce the coming woes. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe, to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound." In 2019, Two-Eye Borisov swept into our solar system, just as the whole world was plunged into the first woe, the global coronavirus crisis. Now, listen closely as Brother John unfolds the stunning connection, how this mysterious interstellar traveler illuminates the very verses tied to the first woe of the fifth trumpet in Revelation. And there's more. Discover how even Donald Trump's two presidential terms were foreseen in Scripture, woven into the grand prophetic timeline.
The woes, especially the first and the second woe, have long texts and they are extremely symbolic. So we have to research very carefully to understand these texts perfectly. I try to do that now with the fifth trumpet that is in our past, and of course, and that's correct, has to do with the corona crisis. If we suspect the fifth trumpet to be the corona crisis that had worldwide impacts, and everybody of you has sensed it and were restricted in one or the other way, and had problems, family problems, and economical problems, and. So this was really a woe, definitely. When we research it, we have first, of course, to decipher the first verse of the fifth trumpet, which reads, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." Two symbols at least: a star fall from heaven to earth and a key to the bottomless pit. To decipher which star it could be, and normally stars are angels, they're messengers, they are heavenly bodies that move in a certain time. So it is a star falling from heaven to earth seems to be a very special comet. To find it, we should first look at the beginning of the corona crisis, because the beginning of the fifth trumpet and the beginning of the corona crisis must coincide. Wikipedia has this timeline article there, and we can disregard, of course, the unconfirmed reports of early cases that were later done and were not confirmed. But in October and November, we have the first confirmed COVID-19 cases. So that the trumpet could sound and the star fall from heaven, we have to find a comet or something like this that was visible at that time and made some headlines, because it should be visible for the people on the earth, at least for astronomers. Yeah, and there is such a comet, and it's a very unique one. It is called Two-Eye Borisov, and it made big headlines. Here you have a picture of Borisov in October 2019. It had already developed a coma, so it was active at that time. And why is it 2I and not C/? Because it was the second interstellar object ever discovered. The first one was the famous Oumuamua, but Oumuamua was not a comet, it was only a space rock. While this is a star, it shines. It is a comet, It's the second interstellar object, therefore the 2, but it is the first comet ever. It's the first observed rogue comet that is not coming from our solar system, but from heaven, from interstellar space, not from the Oort cloud, not anywhere, the Jupiter region. No, it came from far, far, far away from the outer space. And nobody knows exactly where it came from. The Bible says it came from heaven. Let's look where this comet was, for example, on the 1st of October, and if we can find parts of the text to fulfill, especially the part that says that to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. We should find something that fulfills this text with the key, so we have to find the key. Is it difficult? We will see. On the 1st of October 2019, 2I Borisov is found in Leo. And in Leo, we have a very prominent asterism. It is called the sickle. I marked it here. It's called the sickle. It has the form of a sickle, but it could also be something like a key. Can we find out the correct date when this key was given to Borisov? At least it should go to the handle so that it could receive the key, right? Let's go forward some days, couple of days, and look if we have an activation signal coming there. Yes. And now you see it very clearly. It is indeed the moon that activates the whole sign, Borisov, directly in the handle of the sickle, and the moon activates it, having even itself a sickle form. This is the moment when the key to the bottomless pit was given to Borisov 2019. In the text, we are also told that it falls from heaven unto the earth. So unto the earth is, of course, for a comet, the nearest approach to the earth, not falling onto the earth. That would have already destroyed the earth. But it is a symbol for the closest approach of a comet to the earth. We can find that when we ask. It was December 28, 2019, when it made its closest approach to earth. Yeah, in the first interstellar object, comet, with its closest approach to Earth. Now let's compare the history again of the corona crisis development. You can see here the dates. Already we are in December. And in December, many and more cases were found, especially in Wuhan and in the region of China. But then around December 28, we had the first novel disease report, and on December 28 itself, the first sequencing of the genome of the COVID-19 virus. That's an important development, because this sequencing of the genome later should lead to the development of the vaccine, the weapon against the COVID-19 disease, COVID-19 virus, because without the sequencing of its genome, they would not have been able to develop the mRNA and DNA vaccines. Perhaps around these dates, in late December 2019, we can find something else in the biblical text that would point to a heavenly sign. So the first thing is we have to understand why it is the key to the bottomless pit. Already in 2017, 2018, we deciphered in articles what the bottomless pit is. The bottomless pit is a symbol for our central black hole in the Milky Way, in our galaxy. I would like to show you this center of our galaxy. It is here, and it's Sagittarius A star. It is a black hole with 4 million solar masses. It's a massive black hole. It's not the biggest of all black holes, but it's the biggest in our Milky Way. So it is in a certain region of the skies. It is surrounded by enemy constellations. There's Ophiuchus, the papacy. There's the UN, Scorpius. And there is the USA, the second beast with the fallen crown, fallen Protestantism. You have to look exactly to find to which constellation of the free Sagittarius A star belongs, and it is already in its name. It's of course Sagittarius. It belongs to the second beast, to the USA symbol in the heavens. Very important when we go forward in the deciphering of these texts. So why is a black hole a bottomless pit? Any black hole is matter completely compressed to a small space. This has such a high gravity that nothing, not even light, can escape. So when you fall into a black hole, you are lost and gone forever. You will never come out anymore, no matter, no, not even light. Therefore, it is a bottomless pit. But there's even more to that, because it's bottomless. It does not have any bottom where you can fall to, because the indefinite small point in the middle, in the center of a black hole, is called singularity. No scientist would know what happens there, because all universal laws collapse totally. It has no bottom. There's no knowledge what it is. It could be speculative, a new universe. It could be anything else. It could be many dimensions. It could be God himself. And I believe it's even a symbol for God, because we have there the collapsing of our four-dimensional time-space universe. God wants to live in the darkness. We have one verse in the Bible saying that. And I believe we have here a pretty nice symbol for God himself, really powerful. It's the greatest power in our universe are these black holes. And it's also a mysterious thing. Here is the bottomless pit. So we know now that Borisov has gotten the key to this bottomless pit. How did it open it? And when did it open? What is the biblical verse that speaks about the opening itself? It's of course verse 2, and it says, and he opened the bottomless pit. So that must be a certain moment, and that must be defined again in the heavens. And there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. Okay, we have a great furnace around every single black hole. It is the matter that circles around a black hole, and it's called the accretion disk. There the matter is heated up to millions of degrees Celsius. It is the hottest place in the universe, if you want. It's a great furnace surrounding the black holes. And this is matter that heats up and later falls into the black hole to disappear forever. But this accretion disk is bright. It's really bright. And therefore, we are able to see in this brightness the shadow of the black hole itself, even if light cannot escape a black hole. It is what we see is indeed the accretion disk. And the perfect symbol for it is the great furnace. We have the mention here of the sun and the air. And when you remember my last video, air, and there are only 2 verses in Revelation that talk about air, has been deciphered in the last video that I showed you. In the 7th bowl, there was also the air symbol, and it was Jupiter. Having now deciphered the bottomless pit as the black hole and its accretion disk as the great furnace, we should also be able to see the smoke. And this is the area of the center of our galaxy. When we look here a little bit, you see the smoke, but I can make it clearer. I can bring up the brightness, the saturation. Now you can see very clearly that this is the smoky area, but commonly we call it the Milky Way. In very clear nights we can see this smoke. It is nothing else but the shimmer of the Milky Way. Let me bring it back to the normal saturation. Now you have the smoke, but the smoke is of course now that came out of this bottomless pit a symbol for the corona crisis, the coronavirus itself. Because a flu virus, which is a coronavirus, is of course distributed through the air and therefore smoke. It is a pollution of the air. Smoke is not nice to inhale, and it's not nice to inhale a flu virus neither. So therefore the smoke itself, and very carefully please, it's not the locusts that we talk later about, it's the smoke. This is the coronavirus. But now we have a certain date defined in the biblical text. And it is the date when the sun and the air, and we believe the sun is the sun and the air is Jupiter, were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So this gives us now the next sign and a certain date. Let's look it up. So we have to observe if anything happens here in this smoky area that would fulfill the biblical text. So when I move forward in time, I have to observe very carefully when the sun comes into this smoky area of the Milky Way, and then look very carefully if I can see something like a symbol. Can you see already now that Jupiter is here and the sun? But we still need the activation signal, and I can see the moon coming. I hope you can see it as well. And what happens, I have to show you very, very exactly. We have a solar eclipse, and we even have a annular solar eclipse. It was a perfect annular solar eclipse exactly on the day. Is this fulfilling and the sun was darkened? Of course it is. But what does the moon do some minutes later? It darkens also Jupiter, the air. Can you see how incredibly this was orchestrated by God? Can you see that when an annular solar eclipse happens, this gives the sun a crown? And crown in Spanish or in Latin is corona. So it gave even the name of the crisis directly. And where is the virus transported with? Of course, with the air. Yeah, it was an airborne virus. Flu viruses are airborne. So Jupiter, the darkening of Jupiter, the air was polluted. And of course, it was the corona crisis. So you have now a date. You have the 26th of December. Let's go back to the timeline of the corona crisis. We have the 27th of December that the first novel disease report came out. So the Hubei Provincial Hospital of Integrated Chinese and Western Medicine, they immediately alerted the local CDC, Wuhan Disease Prevention and Control Center, and this was the first official report for the disease, exactly after the darkening of sun and the air. And then came, of course, all the other things that led then very soon to the development of the vaccines. So we have now clearly the smoke deciphered as the coronavirus itself, the illness, the disease. But what is the locusts? And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. The locusts are an aftermath, or the locusts are caused by the smoke, by the disease, so they cannot be the disease themselves. And it must be something like the next date that we have. And lo, there came out of the smoke locusts. Now, locusts in the Bible are definitely a symbol for scarcity, for destruction of economy. Look, in former times, people were majorly living and doing their money with agriculture. And imagine now, think on Egypt, Imagine now the locust plague. What was it majorly a damage to? Came famine over the people and of course economic collapse. Can you remember which date happened the economic collapse? Yeah, it was the 11th of March 2020 when the WHO, the World Health Organization, proclaimed the pandemic. On the website of the World Health Organization itself, you can read when the pandemic was proclaimed. It was characterized as the outbreak of a pandemic on the 11th of March 2020. So we have a date for the locusts. We will see what the locusts really are. On this website, we can read 2 dates, very important dates. And it's here. This led WHO declare a public health emergency of international concern on the 30th of January 2020. And I spoke to ChatGPT and I asked, when was it decided to develop vaccination against the COVID-19 virus? ChatGPT answered it was in January 2020. They already started to develop vaccines for this virus. Because remember, the genome had already been deciphered in December. So they could now develop their mRNA-based vaccines. But the economic collapse did not happen before March 11, 2020, when the WHO characterized the outbreak as a pandemic. And this led to a crash of the stock markets, of the job markets. This is the total, it was the total crash also for the cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. And it was one of the black days in economy, of course. So the locusts had started to do their work. The locusts have been proclaimed by the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization itself did not produce the smoke, but they produced the locusts and the vaccines, of course, which the locusts are a symbol for. So when you read the text, you understand very well that the smoke caused the locusts. Yeah? And unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. Locusts are insects, aren't there? We have now a symbol for scorpions and we have also locusts. Can we find the scorpion on the sky? Of course. It's the constellation of Scorpio. But the locusts, do they also have a symbol in the heavens? Let's follow the path of Borisov. So you can see now that the darkening of Jupiter, the air, and the sun happened in December. And we were here in this area of the black hole and the tail of Scorpion. So that this is also activating the tail, at least, of Scorpius. But where was Borisov at that time? We have to look it up. Yeah, it was in the tail of a snake. But where did it come from? Let me go some days backward and look at that. So in the beginning of December, when the corona crisis was developing, then Borisov, after Leo, marked a very, very important symbol. It was the crater full of poison of the terrible water snake. It would even then go into their tail, and there's a lot of tails in the text. So this must then be the cup of the woman of the unfaithful church, including all ecumenical churches, not only the Catholic Church, but she is the propagator with the popes of the vaccination, of course. This must be the cup that she gave to us. Let's read the text. It's in Revelation 18, of course. For all nations, did the vaccination come over all nations? have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Who gained most from the vaccination? You all know it, Bill Gates and other rich people that are leading the pharmaceutical industry. So this is the cup that she gave us, yeah? The wine of the wrath of her fornication. But now what would the other two woes do? Reward even as she rewarded you, and double her double according to her works. In the cup, in this same chalice, which she has filled, fill to her double. That's the second and the third woe that I explained in detail in my last countdown 2-part video series. So what this is, a cup of fornication of the snake. Let's go forward and see if we can find even an insect that is connected anyhow to the scorpion. Now, and I see it already. We had the date, 11th of March 2020, when the locusts came out and caused the economic collapse. And we are here in an insect, a loud and disturbing insect with wings, and wings are also in the text, as you will see in a moment. And this is the only insect, except Scorpius, in the sky, and it's the only insect that has wings, because Scorpion had no wings, but they are connected one time through the sun symbol and the Jupiter symbol, but also you can see that the galactic equator connects it. And we have here the insect that has wings, and here we have the tail of the scorpion. And we are now directly on the 11th of March 2020. And the sun on the other side shows us that now the fish, the Christians, get a problem. And the Christians are also mentioned in the text I can show you. Here is the mention of a certain part of Christians. And it was commanded them, the locusts, the vaccination, that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, humans, neither any green thing. Green is like green behind the ears, as we say in German. It is young Christians. Neither any tree that is rooted Christians, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So it was commanded to these locusts that were now in development, the vaccination started to be developed, not to hurt any Christian, but only Christians and other people that do not have the seal of God. Yeah? We have later in this video to research when the sealing began and when the sealing would have stopped, or when already the time had come so that woes would be feelable and turn into a test for all the Christians. And here it says clearly that only those Christians that had not the seal of God would be hurt by this plague, by these locusts. And now we come to a very important part also, that we overlooked, half of it at least. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, not immediately, but that they should be tormented 5 months. Tormented? You could mean perhaps it's the virus itself. No, it's not. And that torment was as the torment of a scorpion. Yeah? You saw the scorpion. Then he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. What we overlooked is that we have 2 phases of 5 months. Here we had the first 5 months, which is torment, and death shall flee. And then we have another 5 months in verse 10, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and the word for stings is even prick. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. So we have torment 5 months, but don't kill, don't hurt. But then we had another 5 months where they hurt. Do you see it? This is what we overlooked. We overlooked the second 5 months. And therefore, when the vaccinations were then finally available in the earth, we will research all these time frames exactly right now. When it were available on the earth, then they hurt. While in the time when they were in development, they tormented, and only people perhaps that were in the test phase vaccinated. In this time of torment, they searched death. They searched to have the vaccine. But the vaccine, you saw it already, was the chalice full of the poison of the water snake. It was deadly. So they desired the vaccination, but it would not come to them until certain 5 months would have passed. And this is the 5 months that we have to calculate. And we do not use, of course, prophetic time, but we use real time. We use star time or whatever. We use 5 months. And we can look up in Stellarium, if you want, the exact 5 months that vaccines were developed but not available. But when they became available, then they would hurt 5 months. Of course, the corona crisis took longer than 10 months in total. But this is the key to the understanding in the end, who the king over these things is. And there's a terrible verse that we come to, and that will reveal to us not only the king over the corona crisis, but also the king over the last 2 woes. So we have reached the symbol for the insect locust with the wings on the 11th of March 2020, when the locusts really started to eat up the economy worldwide. So this must be the beginning of the 5 months of torment, and because the locusts were already on Earth. So we had already some vaccinations available, but only for people that were part of the first test phase. Now we calculate simply 5 months. So we come to the 11th of August 2020, and Borisov has advanced to the Centaur. On the 11th of August 2020, we had the first vaccination available in the earth. It was the first ever in broad spectrum used DNA vaccination. It was Sputnik V or 5 of the Russians. That was directly proclaimed on the 11th of August 2020. Let me show you. So I have here, for an example, a BBC article, Coronavirus, Putin says vaccine has been approved for use. That was dated the 11th of August 2020. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has said a locally developed vaccine for COVID-19 has been given regulatory approval after less than 2 months of testing on humans. So it was tested before already, and then it was approved. And they could start to vaccinate the people. This was the 11th of August. So 5 months people were waiting since the economic collapse until a proclamation of one of the world powers would come and say, yes, we have a vaccine. We have the locusts now ready. Interestingly, we are in this centaur symbol. The centaur is a Greek mythological creature, and it has a spear in its hand. It kills the wolf. Can you see the idea of a horse ready for battle to kill the Brothers Grimm fairy tale wolf? Who would be the fairy tale wolf? It would be the COVID-19 flu virus that is killed now by the horses that have man faces, long hair, and all that stuff. Let's see if we can find these symbols. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. So the coronavirus vaccination was, of course, developed to battle the fairy tale wolf, and on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold. So it even points to the name Corona-19 vaccine crowns. Yeah, corona is crown in Spanish. And their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots, of many horses running to battle. Oh, there's a lot of symbolism, but we found out a lot of already. But what is it in reality? And this is what I want to show you in a short form in a diagram of how the COVID-19 vaccines worked. Okay, so I'm not here to explain every single detail of this very new form of vaccination, the first form of vaccination that really brought our human cells to produce something that they normally would not produce. But the long hair, of course, of these horse riders, the centaurs, you can see here. mRNA is a strand of DNA, and the DNA is a very, very long strand. Interestingly, when you do a genome test, then normally it's enough to get a hair and take the DNA out from there. But it looks like curls, like curled hair. So this is the mRNA strand that is put by the vaccine into the muscle, and then it goes into the cell of the body, the human cell. And now the cell starts to produce spike protein. And this spike protein looks like this. It has a resemblance to the coronavirus spikes that the coronavirus itself has. But it looks like lion teeth. So when you look at the spike protein, it is like little teeth entering into the coronavirus cell, but indeed it's the receptors. Let me show you the teeth of a lion for comparison. So especially when you look at this form, it is sitting upon the cell with the pointed part first, and then it goes up and gets wider. And this is the spike protein resemblance, like lion teeth. So here we have this spike protein produced against human nature by its own cell, so because the genome has been changed. And this is what God does not allow. Theoretically, it goes on, this spike protein that is recognized by the immune system, so it changes even our immune system and how it works. And then that immune system would produce antibodies against the corona SARS-CoV-2 virus itself and destroy it with the immune response, just to be complete. But here is the long hair, here is the prick, here is the scorpion's tail that has a sting, as you can read in the text. So interesting is, and they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. I would say they have breastplates here, but of course I asked ChatGPT how they protected the coronavirus vaccination mRNA strand itself, and it said, in the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines, the mRNA strand is protected by a lipid nanoparticle LNP coating. This lipid coating shields, breastplate, the fragile mRNA from degradation in the body, helping it enter cells more efficiently. Once inside the cell, the lipid layer dissolves, allowing the mRNA to be used by the cell's machinery to produce the spike protein, which then triggers an immune response. Here you have the breastplates. And I read articles, but I will save you that for your own research, that the corona vaccines caused blood clots and killed a lot of people by this. And this was because of an iron enrichment of the blood that was caused by this vaccine. And this had to do directly with iron. Then here in the text you have, of course, also the wings again of the flies. And it was the sound of chariots, of many horses running to battle. You know how great were the corona vaccination efforts worldwide. This was a battle led by the churches. The churches forced their members to be vaccinated before going into the church service, and it was a terrible time. And the leading church in this was even, again, the Adventist church that built up their health tents even in front of the Sabbath service churches and vaccinated their members before they would go there. So they did not understand that there were nothing else but the long hand of Pope Francis to divide their members from the bloodline of Jesus Christ given to Adam in Eden. I think I had now explained the tails like scorpions and that they had stings in their tails. I just want to show you what this means. The stings here, it is from kenteo, to prick. So how many people said, did you get the prick already? Incredible, isn't it? And now we have the vaccination, and of course now began the second 5 months. And the second 5 months gives us now the key, when we have deciphered it, to know who is the terrible destroyer, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue has his name Apollyon, which means the destroyer. I had an eye-opening chat with ChatGPT about who the king over all the vaccinations was. Or let me say, at least the greatest part of the vaccinations. I asked what was the leading nation in the vaccination efforts and developments. And the first answer was, during the COVID-19 crisis, the leading nations in producing mRNA vaccines were primarily the United States and Germany. Companies like Pfizer, in partnership with BioNTech, a German company, and Moderna, an American company, were at the forefront of developing and distributing these mRNA vaccines. Their efforts played a crucial role in the global vaccination campaign against COVID-19. I asked any other companies, US companies, that developed vaccines? Answer: yes, apart from Pfizer and Moderna, several other US companies developed COVID-19 vaccines. Johnson & Johnson, for example, developed a viral vector vaccine that's the same as Sputnik V, which also changes the DNA, which only requires 1 dose. Another company, Novavax, created a protein subunit vaccine which uses a different technology from the mRNA vaccines. These vaccines have also contributed significantly to the global battle against the pandemic. I asked, is it correct to say that the US was the leading nation with the most pharmaceutical companies that were developing vaccinations for the world? Yes, it's accurate to say that the US was a leading nation with several pharmaceutical companies actively developing COVID-19 vaccines. Companies like Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson played crucial roles in the development, production, and distribution of vaccines, not just in the US, but around the world. The US's robust pharmaceutical industry and investment in research and development were key factors in these leading positions. Now we come to the king, Abaddon and Apollyon. I said, can you explain in very short form what Donald Trump had to do with this? Had this to do with the Operation Warp Speed? Yes, Donald Trump's administration launched Operation Warp Speed in May 2020. That was the development. The goal was to accelerate the development, production, and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. It involved substantial government funding and coordination with private companies to fast-track vaccine development, aiming to deliver safe and effective vaccines in record time. This initiative significantly contributed to the rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines. So I asked then also, when was these vaccines terminated, or when did they start to be used? On which date in 2020, I believe December or something, was then the first US vaccine available? Yes, you're correct. The first COVID-19 vaccine available in the US was the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. It received emergency use authorization from the FDA on December 11, 2020. Vaccinations began shortly after, marking a significant milestone in the fight against the pandemic. Was there anything happening with the vaccinations in January 2021? Yes. In January 2021, the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines was well underway in the United States. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine had been in use since December 2020, and in late December 2020, the Moderna vaccine also received emergency use authorization and began distribution. Vaccination efforts were expanding during this time, with priority given to healthcare workers, long-term care residents, and the elderly. The goal was to increase the pace of vaccinations to curb the spread of the virus. So now, let me say in mid-December and January, mid-December 2020 and the first weeks in January 2021, the rollout of all the vaccinations really had begun worldwide, totally led by the United States. Operation Warp Speed of Donald Trump had reached its goal, and now the money and the vaccine machine rolled out. But the biblical text says that it's over after 5 months. And you know where we were. So just when the hurting really begins, then it's over. How is this possible? I brought you back to the heavens on the date of the beginning of the 5 months, because this was the end of the non-hurting 5 months, when the people of the earth wanted to receive death, second death. 11th of August 2020, a roaring Putin just had announced the availability of Sputnik V05. So let's go simply forward again 5 months. And now we are back to Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is a symbol for the US. Fallen Protestantism, it has lost its crown. Let's go to the text. It says, and they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit. Who is the angel of the bottomless pit? It is, I show you again, the bottomless pit is Sagittarius A star, and it is in the area of Sagittarius. So it is a US king that is king over the locusts. And he is also king of the bottomless pit. There have been a lot of rumors that what escaped in the Wuhan laboratories was indeed a US-American virus. And this is who opened the bottomless pit was indeed a US president. And this is revealed in the Bible only because nobody ever would find proof for this. So whose name is in the Hebrew tongue Abaddon, destroyer, but in Greek his name is Apollyon. Who was president in the United States when the COVID crisis began, when the smoke came out of the bottomless pit. It was Donald Trump. Who was president 10 months later still? On the 11th of January, still Donald Trump. He had lost the 2020 elections, but on the 6th of January, he started with an attack against the Capitol. You all know this, yeah? The intent to turn over the election result of 2020. On January 7, Donald Trump had to admit and make an official statement in the press that he now accepts the result, because if not, terrible things would have happened with him. On January 11, 2021, I had really to research what happened exactly on that date that is pointed to by the 5 months. I asked ChatGPT again and said, hasn't there been anything important around January 11, 2021? And the answer is very interesting and eye-opening. Around January 11, 2021, several important developments occurred in the aftermath of the January 6th Capitol riot. First, the House of Representatives introduced an article of impeachment against President Donald Trump for incitement of insurrection related to his role in the events leading up to the Capitol attack. Second, several social media platforms, including Twitter, permanently suspended Trump's accounts, citing the risk of further incitement and violence. So Donald Trump lost not only his power through the elections, but he lost power over the masses, over the social networks. He could not reach his supporters anymore. Third, corporations and political donors began reassessing or cutting off financial contributions to lawmakers who had objected to the certification of the Electoral College results. So the fight was over on January 11. These events were part of the broader response to the Capitol riot and the ongoing political fallout. I wanted to know it really by sure, and I asked again. So would it be true that January 11 would mark a very important date in the loss of power of former President Trump? Yes, January 11, 2021 can be seen as an important date in the context of former President Trump's loss of power. It marked a period where multiple significant events occurred in response to the Capitol riot, further isolating Trump. Social media platforms banned or restricted his accounts, limiting his direct communication with his supporters. Second, the introduction of an impeachment article in the House of Representatives highlighted the serious consequences he faced. Third, corporate donors distanced themselves from Trump and his allies, signaling a shift in support from parts of the business community. These factors contributed to a notable decline in Trump's political influence during this period. It was over. But let's go to the heavens. How exact are the heavens? On January 11, the sun was activating the US. All eyes on the US, of course. Yeah? Donald Trump just had lost his power. On January 20, Joe Biden entered the White House. That's just 9 days later. And the sun was out of the US. And who tells me now that Joe Biden, yes, he even with greatest funds and with a loud voice, he started now to distribute even more the COVID vaccine over the world, and especially also in the US. But he is not above Apollon or Apollyon? No. The king was a mighty king. He was the king of the development, and he was king when the great worldwide vaccination started. But the Bible says, here the text ends, because this man, this Donald Trump, is Abaddon, and he is Apollyon. He is the destroyer. He is not what the Christians believe, that he would be elected by God. Perhaps he is elected by God, yeah, but as the destroyer. So I read articles, you can do that by yourself and research, that this prophecy here does not stop directly here, but it says there was something like a pause, because the next verse says, the first woe is past. Behold, after these things yet come two woes. But both names mean the same thing, destroyer. Have you wondered why this name destroyer is given in two different languages, one time in the Hebrew tongue and one time in the Greek tongue? Have you seen how the tail of Scorpius overlaps at the galactic equator with Sagittarius? And now when you research about that, then you can find out that the Hebrews and even the old Arabs, they knew Scorpius. This was already a constellation very well known at that time. But not Sagittarius. Sagittarius was something else. But the Greek mythology, they gave the name to Sagittarius. So it's a Greek constellation, Sagittarius, and it's a destroyer. And it's a Hebrew constellation that even stands for pain and suffering. So it seems to be indeed so that the name is also given two times, because one time Donald Trump was already the destroyer in the fifth trumpet, and he will be a destroyer a second time in his second term, whilst the sixth trumpet.
Now the third interstellar traveler, 3I Atlas, has entered our solar system since June 25, heralding the second woe of the sixth trumpet and marking a sobering point of no return for our world. The destroyer is already at work, stirring chaos across the United States and beyond. The end of all things is drawing near. Now is the time to watch the Finished Mystery series, a guide through these perilous prophetic days. Share the unshakable biblical truth about these interstellar messengers and the time they reveal. Lift up your eyes and cry aloud, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him.